Okay, thank you so much everyone for attending. Let's get started with tonight's session. Slide 2, please. So welcome to our fourth Regional Plan Review virtual Q&A on the environment and the regional plan. My name is Kathleen Frelick and I'll be giving a quick presentation before we jump into questions. I'd like to inform our attendees that tonight's session is being recorded and we'll be posting it on the project website, www.shapeyourcityhalifax.ca/regional-plan. Slide 3, please. So before we begin, I'd like to give everyone some quick instructions for using Microsoft Teams. First of all, if you would like to use closed captioning for tonight's session, please click the CC button in the lower right corner of the screen. Slide 4. You may leave the session at any time by clicking the Leave button in the upper right corner of the screen. The link to the session will remain active throughout the event, so you are welcome to return if you would like. Slide 5. The main goal of the event is to answer your questions and gather feedback. You can submit questions and comments throughout the session by using the chat screen to the right of the presentation and clicking Ask a Question. Slide 6, please. The minutes from this session will form the public record. You're welcome to include your name with the question if you would like, but you may also post anonymously by clicking Post as Anonymous. Slide 7, please. After that, you just type your question into the Ask a Question box, and we will direct the question to our panel of contributors. Slide 8, please. So as I mentioned, I'll give a short presentation on how this evening is going, on how the environment is going to be considered through the ongoing regional plan review. Then our team of HRM staff who have contributed to this section will be available to answer your questions. In addition to this session, we invite everyone to visit the project website to participate in our other engagement tools, including our survey, or to submit comments or any other questions via email or by phone. We'll be gathering public feedback until July 16th. Slide 9, please. So let's get started with the presentation. Slide 10. So we're here today because we're reviewing the regional plan, which means that we are evaluating our land use policies and making sure they represent the direction that council would like to set. We are contemplating how the municipality is physically organized and growing. We kicked off this phase of public engagement on May 20th, and as one component of this, we have been hosting virtual Q&A sessions on various topics of interest. Tonight's session will be focused on the environment theme. Slide 11, please. So we'll just take a quick step back and look at the regional plan. It's a strategic document that was the first document post-amalgamation that provided a region-wide vision for land use. It was first adopted in 2006 and provides a comprehensive outline of how growth and development should take place between 2006 and 2031. Next slide, please. So as a high-level policy document, the regional plan does a few things. First, the plan provides policy direction for planning at a regional and community level. The regional plan sits above the community or secondary plan level documents and above our land use bylaws. It sets region-wide policy intent. The regional plan policy can also set up land use bylaw regulations that will be applied region-wide. So for example, watercourse buffers. These policies can sit in the regional plan, and then the regulations are rolled out through the community land use bylaws. It can also establish the municipality's intent to do future research programs or to undertake additional study. The Green Network Plan, for example, was a study that was identified as being required during our last regional plan review. And finally, the regional plan identifies that there are needs for different types of programming and opportunities to partner with community and other levels of government. Environmental protection requires cooperation across our community, and the regional plan can support partnerships and other groups to achieve our goals. Slide 13, please. So the regional plan is reviewed generally every 5 years. You can see that we completed our first review of the regional plan in 2014, and this is our second that we are aiming to complete in 2022. And this will bring us through the lifespan of the plan to 2031. Slide 14, please. So we have recently released our themes and directions document, which shares ideas about the key planning issues and provides details of the work that's going to be completed through this review. So this really demonstrates the scope of the regional plan review, and the feedback that we receive on this document will help provide focus and direction on our work. Next slide, please. So the themes and directions document includes 11 themes, and they're all highlighted on this slide. An overview of each theme is available on our website, Shape Your City, and today we're going to be focusing in on theme 8. Next slide, please. So theme 8 is about enhancing environmental protection, and I'll go into a bit more detail about how we're considering this through the regional plan review. Next slide, please. So environmental management is one of the main focuses of the regional plan when it was first adopted in 2006. It identified the natural environment as one of HRM's defining features, and the plan homed in on this idea that growth and development in HRM has been and should continue to be shaped by a network of open space. The plan set up that when planning for new communities, we should start by examining these places on a watershed basis. This means determining how development should take place to ensure the health of watersheds is maintained. Since that time, we have furthered this understanding with the Green Network Plan. This provides a high-level overview of the areas and features that contribute to the region's green network. The Green Network Plan is being implemented through many different ongoing initiatives across the organization, but our work in the regional plan review will be instrumental in making sure that our region-wide policy is consistent with that plan. We will be looking to complete some additional study and set up future work related to, for example, naturalization, protection of natural corridors, water resources, and coastal areas. And I'll talk about each of these pieces of work in a little bit more detail in the next few slides. Next slide, please. So one of the most common questions is how the municipality can protect environmentally significant land from development. The tools available are dictated by the HRM Charter, which simply put outlines the powers that the province has granted the municipality in terms of land use. In regard to the environmentally significant lands, we have 4 main tools under the Charter. We are able to prohibit development in certain circumstances, for example, in flood-prone areas or where there are steep slopes or low-lying and marshy areas. This is also how we protect the lands around drinking water sources. We are also able to purchase or support conservation groups' purchases of significant lands to ensure that no development takes place. And a common example of this is our wilderness parks, which we continue to work with our community partners to protect, given their important role in our green network as well as in our park spectrum. And one of the strongest tools we have is limiting significant residential subdivision outside of the urban service area. The regional plan and our regional subdivision bylaw already do this, and this was one of the most significant pieces of the original 2006 plan. We've been asked a number of times about whether the municipality should be asking the province for changes to the HRM Charter, and in fact, several requests were made when the Halifax Green Network Plan was adopted. But in the meantime, given the uncertainty around the timing of these requests and whether or not they'll be approved, we're focusing on how best to use our existing tools to maintain our important environmental lands. So we're continuing to explore the full range of planning tools available to the municipality, and this is something we're going to be doing through the regional plan review. Next slide, please. One major aspect of the Green Network Plan is the idea of natural corridors, which are undeveloped areas that provide linear connections between larger patches of wilderness. It allows wildlife to move from habitat to habitat without human interaction. These corridors are extremely important as they connect habitats to help maintain healthy and diverse wildlife populations. The Halifax Green Network Plan identified the need for a clear approach to protecting natural corridors as the region grows and develops. It identified these corridors at a very high level, but the way our regulations work at a site level, some additional study is going to be needed to see how we can best protect these corridors at a regional scale while managing the impact on individual properties. We expect that through the regional plan review, we'll be setting up future study. Next slide, please. The Halifax Green Network Plan and Halifax both encourage the inclusion and maintenance of natural areas and communities where growth is located or planned. The Urban Forest Master Plan helps provide direction for planning, programming, and maintaining HRM's urban forest. Natural areas help to manage stormwater, reduce the heat island effect, improve water quality, provide shade, and sequester carbon. This kind of naturalization work is already being piloted in HRM to improve the environmental health of our urban areas. Next slide. Protecting the municipality's water resources is critical to our drinking water supply, wildlife and ecological health, recreational use, and aesthetic values. The regional plan directs land use policy to regulate water flow, mitigating flooding, reduce water pollution, and protect ecological function. Through the regional plan review, we'll be both supporting ongoing work and looking for ways to update our existing regulations. Some ongoing work includes the proposed water quality monitoring program. This program is currently being considered, and assuming the proposed approach is adopted by council, we would plan to write regional plan policy which supports that work and the community partnerships that make it possible. Another ongoing piece of work has been stormwater management. We're continuing to work with Halifax Water on updating the joint stormwater standards for private properties, as well as updating our own standards when it comes to public right-of-ways and using green infrastructure. The Halifax Green Network Plan identified the need for further protection of riparian areas and establishing a consistent watercourse buffer across the region. Greater protection for wetlands is also needed. So through the regional plan review, we are intending to review our current land use bylaw regulations and policies for these areas and make those updates. And finally, the regional plan sets out requirements for studying environmental features before development can take place for new communities. And we will continue to do that as we were planning for future growth. Next slide, please. And finally, in regards to coastal protection, we expect that sea level rise and extreme water levels exacerbated by the increasing frequency and intensity of storms will significantly impact the Atlantic coast. As a result of climate change, HRM can expect significant impacts from sea level rise and extreme water levels in coastal areas, including flooding, saltwater intrusion, and coastal erosion. All of which can significantly damage infrastructure, property, and natural features. As a result, it is very important to limit damage to coastal communities and ecosystems by carefully managing development in these areas. The regional plan does set out a vertical setback requirement that is implemented in various community land use bylaws, but we've identified a few gaps in the way these regulations have worked. The province is also continuing to work on the Coastal Protection Act regulations, and we've been meeting with the Department of Environment to understand their proposed approach. We're hoping that our timelines will align so that we'll be in a position to adopt the revised policies and regulations that are consistent with the Coastal Protection Act, but also tailored to an HRM context. If our timelines don't align, then we will likely still be making some adjustments to strengthen them. Next slide, please. So before we move on to our Q&A session, I'd just like to invite everyone to learn more by visiting our project webpage at www.shapeyourcityhalifax.ca/regional-plan. And while you're there, we encourage everyone to participate in our various engagement tools, including our survey. You're also welcome to follow up with any comments or questions using our email, regionalplan@halifax.ca, or by phone at 902-233-2501. Next slide, please. So now let's move on to our Q&A. Please use the Ask a Question function to the right of the presentation screen to submit any questions that you may have. Next slide, please. I'll be going through the questions in the order that they are received and direct them to our panel. We will be going through as many questions as we can in the time remaining before 7:30, and we will be posting this video on Shape Your City, along with a copy of written responses to all of the questions we receive, and we'll be sure to include answers to any questions that we may not be able to get to in that written response. You're also welcome to follow up with us directly by phone and by email. Next slide. So I'll just quickly introduce our panelists for today. Our panelists include Samantha Page, who is an adaptation climate change specialist with our energy and environment team at HRM. Emma Waddy, who is a water resource specialist with energy and environment. Shannon Miedema, who is the program manager for energy and environment. Penelope Kuhn, who is our policy coordinator with the Parks and Recreation Department at HRM. Leah Perrin, who is a principal planner with our regional planning team. Kate Green, who is the regional policy program manager with regional planning. Next slide, please. So with all of that said and done, I'm going to start going through some of the questions that we have received. Please feel free to continue to send them as we go through, and we'll be getting to them in the order that they are received. So the first question is, I think I'm going to direct to our regional plan review team. Why the delay in undertaking further work on natural corridors until after the completion of the regional plan?
I can start that one, Kathleen, and I don't know whether Kate will have anything to add. We are grappling with a huge amount of work, as if you've reviewed anything in the Themes and Directions report, you'll likely see. The Halifax Green Network Plan gave us many directions to work on a variety of things. And the natural corridors obviously are one of the most important things that we'll need to tackle in the coming months and years. And so we're definitely looking at ways that we can advance that work through the regional plan review. So I wouldn't describe it as a delay. We certainly are interested in continuing on with that work. But it likely, given that the Green Network Plan is at that sort of high level, and there's maybe need to do sort of additional field work, potentially ground truthing, to understand exactly what we're looking at on the ground, and understanding how we can regulate those corridors at the site level. It's just a significant amount of work, and so it may take some time. We'll be working to resource all of our different projects through the regional plan review, and we'll tackle that as we go.
Thanks, Leah. And I think the only other thing that I would add to that is that we know that there are some corridors that are more important than others, in the sense that they are more sensitive, or perhaps might be closer to development and more under threat. So we know we want to prioritize how we work on them and work in a more coordinated fashion on those and get to those as quickly as possible. We've also been meeting with community members and have been working with Karen Beasley and others to try and rely on expertise in community to learn more about the important corridors and ecologically sensitive areas. So we're certainly not delaying the work, but we're trying to be clear about how we are working on it. We won't be able to get all of that done by the time the regional plan comes forward for adoption. So a lot of it will be setting up to make sure that we can do that work over the next number of years.
Great, thanks so much, Kate and Leah. I think this question is also probably for you too. Does the regional plan have any role to play in preserving and enhancing the health of wilderness environment that is within HRM but provincially owned?
Thanks, Kathleen. I mean, certainly the municipality is a creature of the province, so we're sort of at the whims of the province to manage their land as they will. Now, certainly our regional plan does set out the open space and natural resources designation, and we have included much of that crown land in that designation. So there's specific requirements in there around how land can be subdivided. So, you know, for example, if the province chose to sell land on, they would be certainly still subject to our municipal regulations, our zoning. I'm not sure whether anyone else has any thoughts on that piece.
Looks like that's a no. Thank you, Leah. So our next question, I think I'm going to direct over to our energy and environment team. Is there a way to measure carbon sequestration to determine the effects of changes in urban development that affects wilderness areas within HRM?
That's a tough one. We do contemplate carbon sequestration in Halifax in our climate action plan as part of an important way to help us get to our targets of 2030 and 2050, recognizing that we have to deal with kind of our relationship and treatment of nature if we're going to be able to improve our climate situation, and recognizing that preserving what we do have is really important, not just for climate mitigation purposes, but also on the adaptation side with like reducing flood risks, providing shade, all that kind of thing. And in our climate plan, we also have some actions around regreening initiatives. So that's like slower. So we have to do a lot in a really short term, but then we also are thinking long term out to 2050 and beyond. And so, you know, you might have heard about like different tree goals that the federal government has and internationally around, let's just plant billions of trees, and that will help us ultimately in the long term get to our climate targets. It's not going to help us very much in the short term. Penny might have some things to add from her perspective.
Yeah, I would just add that, you know, of course, it's incredibly complex to understand carbon sequestration changes in a wilderness area or in a forest. And there's certainly a lot of academic literature out there, you know, folks that have tried to do that. So something we could look at possibly down the road is partnering with academics that are truly studying and measuring these types of changes in forest. But yeah, again, it's really complex. It depends on the types of trees and the climate. So yeah, lots of work to be done on that.
Great, thanks so much, Shannon and Penny. I think our next question will probably be for our regional plan review team. What steps are being taken to protect stream and lake watershed areas in Sambro and Pursles Cove wilderness areas? So outside of the Terrence Bay wilderness areas or protected areas like the Backlands, in particular areas around Governor's Pond, First and Third Pond, and Governor's Lake, where there seems to be several major subdivisions being proposed. We may not be able to get into too much specifics, but if you guys can provide a bit more of a general answer to that.
Yeah, I can start a general answer. Certainly our land use bylaw regulations have watercourse buffers. So around watercourses, we're interested in ways that we can better protect watercourses and wetlands. So Kathleen, in your presentation, you certainly went over some pieces of that. In these particular areas, I don't know that I'm able to speak to these areas in particular tonight. Certainly I can follow up with a written answer after tonight. But our beyond just the land use bylaw regulations, I am guessing that these are areas that are outside of our urban service area, where our subdivision regulations are fairly restrictive in what they can do. Now, I could be wrong about that because there was reference in the question about several major subdivisions, so my geography is just not great in this for these places. But outside of our urban service area, where we have some regulations in sort of rural development, there are opportunities to, you know, I suppose protect in how we are designing our subdivisions and regulating through stormwater management policies. I'm not sure whether anyone from the Energy and Environment team has thoughts on watershed management more generally, but that's what I can offer from a land use perspective.
That's great. Thanks, Leah. So for these areas, what has to be directly protected by the province, and where there are areas of cooperation, where are there areas of cooperation needed between the province and the municipality? And I think this is still in regards to wilderness areas. Water bodies. So I may direct this over to the regional plan review team for an initial thought, and then if any of our other panelists have anything to add to that.
Sure, I can start by saying, yeah, there's definitely a lot of jurisdictional overlap between what the municipality is able to do, what the province is able to do. The province, for example, is responsible for approving wetland alteration permits. So there is definite coordination required to make sure that we are, from a municipal perspective, using the full range of tools that we have available to us to make sure that we're protecting things as much as we can, and then where there are gaps in what we're able to do, that we're coordinated with the Department of Environment and can understand their processes and work together on ways to improve. That's it from our perspective. Not sure if Energy and Environment has anything to add.
Yeah, thanks, Leah. I think just I mean, it's almost always a multi-stakeholder partnership when it comes to any type of water. And so we do work closely with the province, but also with all the landowners in the area, developers, different, quarries, homeowners. And there's a lot of moving parts. And, we know that our urban lakes and watersheds are stressed, and it's a whole complicated series of reasons for that are you can't really tease out. And so we're talking about the need for multi-stakeholder management of these water bodies. We're really excited about some of the work we're doing internally. We've proposed a new water quality monitoring program for a series of lakes within HRM that's gotten the approval of the Environment and Sustainability Standing Committee of Council, and it's going to Regional Council at the end of this month. And if they approve that, then we'll be launching a new program, and we haven't had a program to regularly monitor our lakes for quite a number of years now. So that's a piece that we're really looking forward to. And then we continue to do a lot of work in particular lakes like Bannock and Micmac, and some other lakes across the region.
Awesome. Thank you for your answers. Our next question is, does the delay in I think this is a question for our energy and environment team again. Does the delay in implementing the Leahy report affect the environment within HRM?
I might be able to take that one quickly, Kathleen. It's
perfect.
So certainly in our regional plan, the focus on Crown land is on protecting it as open space. So it plays an important role in our open space network. So, you know, I think we're always wanting to work with the province on continuing to monitor protection of open space and sustainable practices around management of land and forests. So, you know, I think that's part of an ongoing conversation that we're continually having with the province. I think we're at what the regional plan does is it reinforces the underpinnings of the regional plan, our focus on environment and environmental planning. So I think the Leahy report starts to refocus our practices, and I think that aligns with the regional plan and what we're trying to do with the outer reaches of the municipality.
Great, thanks so much, Kate. I believe this question is probably for energy and environment. How is the open data initiative being promoted in this process? For example, existing water quality data collection in a machine readable so then it can be communicated in a community accessible way.
I can take that. So there is an open data policy for HRM, and that's really will help guide us moving forward. I can definitely speak for the water quality monitoring program. If it gets approved at regional council, that information would be made available in a accessible way, but also in a manageable way, so that community members will be able to not just see raw data and it's on its own, but also be able to kind of understand it. So in terms of open data, there are several different, there is the open data platform within HRM, but then there are other open data platforms that we would definitely be, for the water quality side of things, for sure, we'd definitely be looking to kind of make our data available moving forward.
Great, thanks so much. I think that this might be a question that our regional plan review team can at least start to take a look at, but I think energy and environment will probably have something to add. How will the expansion of what will the expansion of green infrastructure look like in both municipal right-of-ways and private residential properties? It looks like what modifications and policies within the regional plan can be implemented to promote putting more green infrastructure in place, including in the regional center?
I can start off by just saying that the regional plan is a high-level document, and so it will be supportive of lots of other initiatives. So the green infrastructure piece has been worked on by our infrastructure planning group, and in terms of the right-of-ways, with a wide range of people, including Halifax Water. I think the sort of technical aspect, maybe energy and environment could take that.
Yeah, actually within the planning department, there's some folks working on joint stormwater standards with Halifax Water, and looking at what standards would need to be in place for different types of green infrastructure. So by that we mean things like bioswales, to try and reduce flood impacts, to slow water in those like heavy rain events before it hits our water bodies, to try and limit impacts and limit flooding. So we've also been working closely with the department that deals with our right-of-ways, Transportation and Public Works, and we actually have a project that's including some green infrastructure in downtown Dartmouth that some climate plan funding is being put towards to enable. That came about as a motion of Councillor Austin a little while ago. So that'll be a really interesting project to look at. We've done some work with developers on getting some bioswales in, but it's really kind of at those early stages. And we flagged it as an area of focus as part of environment being a strategic initiative of council over the next 4 years. I think Penny might have something to add here as well.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to add that we do have a naturalization pilot project, a few pilot projects, and one of them is in the right-of-way area. So that was actually an initiative that was brought to us from a resident, and they've taken just a pretty large right-of-way area that was turf grass and have put in hundreds of pollinating plants, and it's been very successful. Now, this is not the right-of-way, but we also have pilots within parks for naturalization. So we've got 3 pilots, and we'll be going back to regional council with a staff report about those pilots at the end of this year. So we'll make some recommendations on moving forward with a full naturalization strategy at that point.
Great, thanks, Penny. And actually, that's a pretty good segue into our next question. I will flag just for our attendees that this is the last question that we've received from everyone. So please feel free to submit more if you would like to ask any additional questions. But in the meantime, I'll turn this over probably to start with our regional plan review team, and then I'm not sure if Penny maybe will have some information to add. But the Urban Forest Master Plan has some neighborhood goals to increase canopy cover. What role will these goals in the Green Network Plan have in the future when HRM urban forests and parklands may be at threat of sale or clear cutting for development? How can these parklands be saved?
Thanks, Kathleen. Yeah, I can try that one. Certainly, we have an ongoing challenge with trees on private property, and and I think that's what the question is getting at. And I apologize if I have misunderstood, but yes, we certainly are interested in maintaining as many trees as part of our urban forest canopy as possible. And when development is taking place, there is always the threat that we will lose some of those trees. And it's an ongoing challenge with our regulations in that we are typically able to require tree retention if you're through a development agreement or if you're around a riparian buffer, but we're limited in what we can do if the trees are cut when no development is yet proposed. So I believe that there is an outstanding request from council. We're continuing to work on a staff report that will address this issue. It is an ongoing thing that we are dealing with our urban forester, and we are continuing to look for different solutions. I don't know whether Shannon or anyone else has anything to add on that.
No, really just that we've consulted a lot of other cities across Canada as part of the research for that report to try and figure out what might be the right fit for Halifax. But yeah, that's still in draft right now.
Great, thanks everyone. So our next question is, what steps are, and I think that this will probably go to our regional plan review team for at least an initial thought. It's pretty specific to an area, so maybe we can just, get some general thoughts, and we may need to follow up on this. But what steps are being taken to protect stream and lake watershed areas surrounding the Preston area? With new development going on close to the city's water supply, are there precautions being taken to preserve the natural function of Lake Major?
Yeah, so we do work with Halifax Water, and Halifax Water actually has their own, I'm not going to remember the name, their titles, but they're like watershed management, source water protection planners, I think is what they're called. And they have source water protection plans for all of our drinking water supplies. So we work regularly with Halifax Water to make sure we understand exactly what those source water protection plans are saying, and that our regulations are aligned with them. And if there's any development that's proposed in the area that could affect those source water lands, we certainly would be consulting with Halifax Water and making sure that we're taking the right steps to make sure that that isn't affected.
The only other thing I'd add to that is we're also working on the Road to Economic Prosperity, which focuses on African Nova Scotian communities and has specific goals for infrastructure and planning around water and land use. So we're working with that group of people to try and identify issues that are important to community. And I suspect that that will be raised as part of that process. And we'll look at it through the Road to Economic Prosperity.
Great, thank you. So again, I think we've sort of reached the last question that we've received from our attendees. Please feel free to submit some more questions. We have some more time, but I think this question would be directed to our regional plan review team. It's a follow-up on the open data question and whether or not there's data from the regional planning data collection that will be brought forward as well.
I'm honestly not quite sure how to answer this one. Maybe I'm just misunderstanding the question a little bit, and we can certainly, I recognize the name on here, so we can certainly follow up with you afterwards. We are certainly interested in getting much better at our data collection overall for the regional plan. We have a set of indicators in the regional plan that need to be updated, and we're interested in just getting better overall at data collection and tracking as much as we can over time, and making sure we're understanding how we're meeting our goals and objectives. So perhaps I'll follow up with you at a later date. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I think the only thing I can add to that one actually is just that some of the open data from our priorities plans, for example, the Halifax Green Network Plan data is available through our open data portal. So there is a fair amount of our the grounding data that is that we're working with for the regional plan review is available through that portal as well. Just a quick question for the team, I guess, from me. So wondering what HRM is doing about sea level rise and storm surge.
Yeah, I can probably answer that. So, I mean, obviously it's a really big issue, especially with hurricane season already starting. And we have recently flown LiDAR, which is basically really detailed elevation models for all of HRM, which is really exciting because it allows us to very accurately map climate hazards. So we'll be using this to overlay kind of updated sea level rise and extreme water level numbers on. So we're currently we're doing kind of like an extreme water level mapping project. We're going to update our sea level rise numbers. We're waiting a little bit on the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So they're like the international body on climate knowledge, and they are releasing their latest numbers in next month, and the last update was in 2013. So we're really excited to get those updated sea level rise numbers and latest climate science, which we'll be using to come up with localized projections on sea level rise, and then mapping those on our really detailed LiDAR maps that we have. And then we're going to be making those public. So to stay tuned for those. but we're really excited to be able to update those for all of HRM. So in the past, we've only been able to do certain areas, but now with the LiDAR data, we'll be able to do it for all of HRM.
Great, thanks so much, Samantha. And you guys had mentioned earlier, I believe it was Emma who mentioned the water quality program that's coming forward. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, for sure. So I presented, it went to Environmental Standing Committee earlier this month and was unanimously approved there, and will be presented at Regional Council later on. And so this is a program that will, if approved, would monitor water quality at 74 different lakes and across HRM, which have been assessed in a previous study that's also available publicly now. That was done by AECOM. And these lakes are kind of a mixture of the high vulnerable and moderately vulnerable. So lakes that have already kind of through other previous HRM studies have been qualified as to have high concerns. There'll be a mixture of different things that'll be collected. Really the main cool thing about the program is that it'll be a hybrid, so it'll be in partnership with a lot of community organizations. So we'll be looking for community groups to be involved with the program itself and to support some of the data collection, of course, being trained and looking at different protocols that will be in place and whatnot too. So yeah, so that's just kind of a quick overview of what that program would look like.
Great, thanks so much, Emma. In Halifax, there is an action item about promoting naturalization on private property. I'm just wondering where that stands and what we can do to support that.
Penny, did you have thoughts on that one?
Hi.
I think go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I know that that's an action item. I don't really have an update on what's been done. But, perhaps after the staff report that I mentioned earlier about naturalization, there could be some synergy with that and how the municipality moves forward on that.
Yeah, I think our first step was really to inventory all natural assets within the boundaries of HRM, whether HRM has any ownership or control over them or not. And then looking at the pilot projects that Parks and Penny are doing on HRM owned land, and then looking at how to maybe promote or incentivize other people to do similar things on their lands and what the co-benefits are. So there's like a big public education component, community mobilization component to that, just like there is for a lot of climate action. So we're kind of in the very early stages of that particular action. I'll just say there are 46 actions in the climate plan, and they're all very large, long-term, multi-pieced actions. So we're trying to keep our eyes on all of them right now.
I could just add that there's also a boulevard gardening administrative order that is new. And so that allows homeowners or landowners to, instead of just having turf grass in their boulevard, like so the area between the road and the sidewalk, that can have all sorts of, naturalized plants, pollinator plants. So that's a new change for HRM, which is a great synergy with the other naturalization projects that we have started as well.
The only other thing I might be able to add to this from the planning perspective is that we are using the regional plan review to frame up our objectives for our suburban and rural planning processes. So that will be the way that we create detailed regulations in our suburban and rural areas, similar to the way we created regulations for the center plan. And one of the things that council is talking about a lot is green oriented design. So how we consider open space and natural areas in designing or infilling communities. So I think that will be an important part of our work going forward. And certainly I would say COVID has created maybe more awareness around the importance of green areas, not just for their environmental function, but also for their health benefits and mental health benefits. So we're seeing renewed energy around that as well in terms of community design, which is great to hear from council.
Great, thanks everyone. And earlier we were talking about the Coastal Protection Act, which is being developed by the province. How is HRM working with the province on this initiative?
I can jump in and start that, although I know that we're all working closely with them. So on the energy and environment side of things, obviously, you know, with an adaptation perspective being such a huge part of Halifax, we're in really close conversations with them. The act was passed, and essentially they're at the stage where they're working on developing the regulations. We have a little bit of insight as to what those will look like, but we're still kind of like the rest of like everyone else waiting to see what those regulations are going to be and how they align with Halifax. We're certainly kind of both on kind of the same page of the importance of basically planning, having smart planning around coastal areas. So it'll be really interesting to see what they come out with, but we're obviously, you know, going to continue to, I think Kathleen mentioned this earlier, you know, obviously continue to move forward with our climate action and making sure that, you know, when we do our updated sea level rise and extreme water level maps, that those are going to be integrated into our planning and updated vertical allowance numbers for, you know, development, how far, you know, above sea level you would need to develop. And hopefully, you know, those align with the Coastal Protection Act. And I think it's really important that we, you know, will align with them, but our numbers might be a little bit, we may go above and beyond what the province has suggested based on, you know, our localized context. So I don't know if you guys want to add anything, but.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is there in the themes and directions report, there is a little bit of a laundry list. It's my laundry list really of the things that I think we need, the sort of gaps that we've identified in that are the way our coastal requirements work right now. So just one, you know, basic example is that we have coastal elevation requirements, but then the horizontal setback is the same as for watercourses. So there really is a difference, obviously, between the ocean and inland watercourses, and our regulations should probably reflect that. So that's just sort of one example. Another thing might be, you know, how do we deal with barrier beaches or estuaries? These sort of inland, but they're still coastal. They still are, you know, subject to storm surge and wave action and all of those things, and need to be treated kind of differently than a lake would be. So it will be interesting to see how the province moves forward, and then it would, you know, will be great if we're aligned. And as Samantha said, we can certainly go over and above whatever it is that they propose. I mean, we are over and above right now with our coastal elevation requirements anyway, so that won't be that much of a change. Thanks.
Great, thank you everyone. So at this point, I'm not seeing any additional questions or comments from our attendees. So I think that we might be wrapping up. If you can go to the next slide, please, Shiloh. So if you do have any additional questions or would like to discuss any of these topics in more detail, we invite everybody, as I mentioned, to visit our website, which is our Shape Your City page, as well as contact us by email or by phone. We're happy to talk about this in greater detail. And certainly we will be posting the video of tonight's session, as well as a transcript of the questions and answers on the Shape Your City page. So please check back for that. Otherwise, thank you to everybody who attended and to our panel, and have a great night, everyone.